In today's video, I want to show you some of my favorite tips and tricks for optimizing images, renaming images, and getting them onto the web with the right file size, which basically means how to resize, how to rename, how to figure out the difference between width and height in pixels versus resolution if you're not familiar, and also tips and tricks for tackling those weird ratios in Squarespace or any other website builder if they use those 1:1, 3:2, 4:3. What the hell do those even mean? And also some of my best tips and tricks for videos and where to host them and where to find them and those kinds of things. So I'm going to tackle all of that today. And then before you freak out, before I dive into the slides and everything that I have for you, remember I have a freebie below that's going to have all of this information ready in a Notion copyable thing that you can go grab at the link below. So you can either do that now and follow along, or you can do it at the end if you feel like you want access permanently. So before I dive into that, if we haven't met before, my name is Caitlin. I run Launch the Damn Thing. I am a Squarespace educator and designer. I've been graphic designing and web designing for many, many years, and I have a lot of tips and tricks to share. I started in print design in 2006, left print design as a career in 2020. So that's a long gap of time. I know a lot about print resolution, print colors, all the things print, not wholly applicable to web design, but it does help knowing what resolution means versus file size versus height and width and all of those things. So I'm using that knowledge today to share with you how some of this actually applies to website design. So without further ado, let's dive in because this is going to be kind of a robust topic today. So diving right in, the image file sizes is the first thing that we need to tackle because you need to understand what those abbreviations actually mean. If you don't, skip to the next section and we'll dive into file naming and some other tips. So to understand the file size naming conventions, I've color coded them in this cheat sheet, which you'll be able to download from the link below. And basically you just need to know that green is good for websites, and the closer you get to pink, the worse it is. In fact, arguably, you're not going to be able to use anything other than KB or kilobyte or MB, which is megabyte. So both of those options are pretty much your only option for websites specifically. And this is what they actually mean. So kilobytes will be the smallest file size, 1,000 kilobytes equals 1 megabyte, and so on up the list. Now, for image resolution, this is what we're talking about when we talk about like the number of pixels in the display that represent the image that your eyeballs see. So this is not height and width, this is density of pixels, basically. So for lowest resolution for print, we're starting around 150. You can technically go lower than that depending on what's printing, but you probably don't want to because it's going to look like shit. For web, low resolution is 72. That's pretty typical. The most average is going to be 72 to 144. PPI is pixels per inch. DPI is dots per inch, as I say over here. You're looking for high resolution, which you can get on web with 144 or 72 if it has enough pixels. So I know that's going to be a lot to take in for the moment, but let's just move on to the next slide. Using your images. Now this is where you talk about the height and width for the pixel size as opposed to and addition to the resolution in each image. So for an image block or an inline image, if you're not on Squarespace and they call it something different, you're looking at roughly 1,000 pixels wide or up to 800 pixels. So 1,000 pixels tall, 1,000 pixels wide, 800 tall or wide, in that neighborhood is about all you're really ever going to need for something inline. And for that, specifically with Squarespace, you're looking at 250 kilobytes or under is going to be easiest to achieve that file size if the resolution is 72 ppi and the pixel width or height, whichever is longest, is 1,000 pixels or under for an inline image or an image block. For gallery images, kind of the same concept. You can go a little bit bigger, but it's going to be about the same problem, right? The resolution that you want, 72 or 144, with the height or width of about 1,000 pixels. For logos specifically, because they show small, you do want a higher resolution logo, and ideally you can upload an SVG file for that, but Squarespace doesn't yet allow that. So PNGs are typically what you're aiming for. They tend to be larger file sizes in general. You can do up to 1,000 pixels for that height or width, but it's going to display however you set it to display in Squarespace, and they may or may not, probably will optimize that. So the higher you can get it, when they optimize it, it'll still be clear. So you're just going to have to test it. Logo files tend to be, even though they're PNGs and those tend to be larger, generally speaking, they're probably not going to be 1 megabyte file sizes, just because there's not as many pixels that dictate what's inside the actual image, because it's a graphic versus an actual photograph. For background images, you're looking at up to about 3,000 pixels wide or high. On average, I'd say I stick closer to 2,000, 2,250 to 2,500, those kinds of ranges. 3,000 is on the larger side. You don't use portrait size images for backgrounds just because it's really hard to figure out where to crop it. You never really can get it to crop in the right place. So just don't only use landscape orientation images for backgrounds. For those, you can probably go up to 500 kilobytes. There's not actually a limit, and you can technically upload a 10 megabyte file for your background, but the page is going to load really slowly. So in the neighborhood of 250 to 500 for each image is going to be ideal there. And then a higher resolution, if you can get it, is great because it's going to be a background that's displaying, edge to edge potentially on the website. So that's going to be the goal there, to make sure that you have a crystal clear image. So for cropping, because that's the next question, what do those ratios mean in Squarespace? So if you're not familiar, Squarespace has some areas where the images are pre-cropped to these weird ratios. So it's going to say 1:1. Most people know that that means square, but beyond that, maybe we're not really sure. So I've taken the liberty of creating blank Canva templates that are pre-sized to high definition, high resolution pixel sizes so that you can fill the blank space and with whatever your design is, and know that when you choose that ratio in Squarespace after you've exported that image from Canva, it's going to fit without cropping out important parts of it. I do want to specify though that if you put text inside an image here that's important for you to read, that's not accessible. So just make sure whatever you put in here is not meant to be read. So the 1:1 ratio, as I said, is square. All four edges or all four sides are the same length. The Canva template in the freebie that I'll put below is 1920 by 1920 pixels. So it's going to be a larger size. It's about 2,000 pixels. Why did I choose 1920? That's in the HD size range. And so that's kind of where we're starting. That'll give you a pretty clear graphic if you download it. So that's 1:1. For the 3:2 format, that is horizontal. It's going to be sort of similar to a YouTube size video shape, but not that shape. So this Canva template, that is, again, all of these are going to be blank and you can access them from the freebie. They're all in the same freebie, so you don't have to download like 6 different freebies. The Canva template is 2,880 pixels by 1920. And this is because the 1920 is part of the HD ratio that we want, but the 1920 is the shorter side. So we're talking this side, and the left and right side is the shorter side. That's the 1920 pixels in height. The width is 2,880. So basically the left and right is shorter. So that's the first one. And then 2:3 is the same thing, even though it doesn't really look like it. Our brains tell us this is taller and more narrow, but it is the same exact thing. It's just turned on its side. So this is the vertical version of 3:2. Same dimensions, flipped on its side. That's it. Side-by-side comparison here, because 4:3 is another option. You can see 3:2 is shorter and wider than the 4:3 option, even though they are both horizontal ratios. So next, 4:3, let's talk about that. The longest edge of this is 1920. The shortest edge is 1440. So it's a little shorter in some respects than the 3:2 or 2:3. Same thing, right? So we have one version 3:2 and then it's vertical 2-3, and then we have one version that's 4-3 and it's vertical 3-4. And again, side by side for the vertical version here so you can see the difference. Okay, so now we're coming into the video size you're all familiar with, 16:9. That's the typical video format for YouTube. So that's a size you're familiar with. This is also the same size, by the way, that is used on social media. It's just flipped upright. So 16:9 is horizontal, 9:16 is vertical for TikTok, Reels, all that stuff. So this is the typical size for HD video starting at 1920 by 1080. 1080p, that's you heard of before, that's HD video, that's on the lower side of HD, can go up from there. By the way, any of these templates in Canva you can upsize, and I'll give you a link in the description below to help you calculate approximate ratios. The last one is the ultra wide, and to be perfectly honest, I'm totally guessing on this one because for whatever reason, the article where I found these wonderful images from Squarespace did not include the actual size for this graphic. But based on the fact that it is 1920 and the other one is 16:9, I'm guessing because it said 21:9. So I put in the ratio at 1920 and it came out at 25:20. So I'm just guessing, but this looks pretty accurate. So you can change the Canva template after you've had access to it, but I'm just being transparent here. This is an approximation. This is the only one that I'm not 100% sure about. And here's a side-by-side comparison of the two. So you can see the difference. This one is like longer and shorter, and this one is longer and taller. Or shorter and taller, whichever way you want to look at it. Okay, so let's talk about file naming tips. First tip that I have for you is to make it a brief description and add your business name onto it. Because if you want your business to be Googleable in Google Images, you got to put your business name in the file. The other option is to put a brief description in your name, same reason. So the brief description sort of can act like alt text in a way, especially in circumstances where actual alt text fields are not available, like background images in Squarespace don't yet have an alt text space. We're hoping for it. We've been asking for it for a while now. Tip number 3 is to use delimiters in your file name. So that means dashes, the pipe, which is the upright key, right under the delete key on a Mac, and the plus sign or underscores. So that's just to kind of break up the file name because these things can be pretty long when you follow this kind of ordering system or naming system. So you want to use delineators, maybe instead of spaces. It depends on how you feel about that. I have not found that spaces or no spaces, dashes or no dashes, plus signs or no plus signs, whatever. I haven't found that any of that actually matters. So it's just, for me, it's just been my personal preference. I'm sure there are SEO experts that have a preference that is different than mine, but in my experience, it hasn't seemed to make too much of a difference. Tip number 4 is to not use a colon. That's one of the punctuation types that seems to, colons and periods actually, I didn't put that in the slide, but for example, if you put step 4 period, it's going to think everything after the period, even if you have a really long name before the period JPEG or period PNG at the end, it's going to think that the rest of that is a suffix, like the file format. So you want to stay away from periods and you want to stay away from colons. Specifically, the Mac doesn't like to use a colon. I don't know about PC, but anytime you put a colon, it gives me an error and it wants me to try again. So those are file naming tips. Some examples of that. Here's a descriptive format. Some examples: Caitlin smiling, comma, sitting at a desk in home office, plus launchthedamnthing.com. launchthedamnthing.jpg, whatever. Transferring ownership of a website to client, -- launch the damn thing, blog post thumbnail. Portrait of Caitlin Deco sitting at her desk wearing an excited but goofy smile, .jpg. Here are some examples of those delimiters I was talking about. The examples using dashes, examples using spaces and a dash, examples using only underscores, examples of the plus sign. So one of the cool things about naming conventions, and if you're describing the photo, the images themselves actually become searchable in your asset library, which when you get to a point where your website is like 8 or 9 years old, mine, technically, the content in it is a collection of stuff that has, some of which has been around since 2016, like old blog posts and stuff like that. So I have thousands of images in my asset library now. And if I was searching for something in particular that I know was in an old blog post, this kind of naming system makes it easier to track that down. For example, if you put your name in all images of you, it's going to be easier to find one of those images later. The one thing I would say don't do is using a colon, exactly like that. So this is the situation where that's what that would have looked like. So best practices on size limits. Of course, we all know that one of my favorite SEO tools is Henry Purchase's SEO Space. Highly recommend. His recommendation is to keep it 250 KB or kilobytes and smaller, especially because Squarespace also optimizes our images. And sometimes if we upload an image that is close to 250, like 249 or 235 or 216, then it could potentially optimize the image and make it larger than the 250. I know that has happened. I'm not a stickler about that. I don't freak out if it's 251 kilobytes or even if it's 700 and under. I'm not going to freak out as long as it's not happening all the time. That's the main point here. So on the other hand, on the flip side, Squarespace themselves actually recommends 500 kilobytes and under. So the reason why I aim for 250 is better safe than sorry kind of situation. So if the SEO expert says this size works better, and obviously the smaller the file without losing quality and visual appeal, if we're starting to get, pixelated and distorted images, that's one thing. But as long as the size is not affecting the quality of the image, then the smaller the file size, the faster the page is going to load, period. So 500 is the actual recommendation from Squarespace. 250 KB and smaller is Henry's goal. That's what we're supposed to be aiming for. So that means in order to hit that goal, you need to be able to not only adjust the resolution, like I said in the beginning, this is why we covered the difference between the two at the start of this thing. So you want to be able to adjust the resolution and the size, left, right, height, width, right? So both. You can do that if you combine two different methods. I have an older video, which I'll link below or up here, to an older video where I talk you through renaming and resizing images in Finder on a Mac. So you don't necessarily need Photoshop or anything like that. You can also do something similar in Canva. It's a few more steps, but go watch that video to understand how to resize images in Finder first. You can adjust the resolution and the height and width there. Once you have a smaller file size from that step, then compress the image in something like Tiny JPEG, and that's how you can get the file size way down. And I mean way, way down. I transparently ignored softwares like this, web apps like this for many years, thinking I could do it just fine in Photoshop as a designer. No. These softwares do it way better, way faster. So for example, you can use Tiny JPEG. That works anywhere. Anyone can use it. It works in your internet browser. And the only limitation is that on the free plan, you can only do up to 20 megabytes or 20 images at a time. But all you have to do is refresh the page for another 20 images and refresh for another 20 and refresh for another 20. It's inexhaustible. So you don't need to have a paid plan, but you could if you wanted. There also is a file size limit, and I can't remember what it is, but I want to say it's fairly low, like 5 megabytes or 10 megabytes per image. So that is also a consideration. It is a higher limit if you are on a paid plan. There's also options like Squoosh.app and ImageCompressor.com. So there are a few options that you can use to actually compress the image, and that is what gives it that final push to get you under those limitations that you're looking for, so your pages will load more quickly. What you don't want to do is leave the original file names alone. So I never want to see anyone uploading images that are like IMG_1057 or DMG_18567. I never want to see that. You are never going to be able to track that thing down. And if you're leaving the original file names, it's also going to be pretty hard for you to differentiate on your own machine which one is the original and which one you may have resized. It may even override the original if you're not careful. So making a copy of these images, renaming them and resizing the copies, and leaving your original files somewhere is going to be best practice in general. You also want to make sure that you are not uploading images larger than 1 megabyte each. Squarespace's limit is 20 megabytes per file that you upload. So technically speaking, you could upload images to a gallery and a portfolio that are all under 20 megabytes. If you do that, that page is going to be so slow, no one's ever going to stick around to wait for that load time to finish. So you do not want to do that, even though you technically can. That is really more for like uploading a PDF. It's going to be linked up to a button or something like that. It's not meant for images. The last thing that you don't want to do is to skip adding alt text. This is really important for accessibility. Basically, it allows screen readers to read what is inside an image that they can't see. So this is not for us. If you can see the image, it's not for you. But try to describe what's inside the image, what's happening in the image, or at least put in there decorative or something that indicates that the image is not important and there's nothing in there that they need to see in order to understand what's on the page. So the next question you probably have is for video tips. I'm not going to go too deep into this because this is a whole different world, but I will give you some basic information that I've learned just for my own use case as a non-video person. I know I say that as I am like recording a YouTube video, but I have never been a videographer, so not a professional here. But my own tips, Squarespace does now host videos, so you can upload full videos to Squarespace. You get 30 minutes of hosting storage space for free with all of the Squarespace plans that I'm aware of. And then after that, you have to pay for an additional add-on hosting plan. This is on top of your website's hosting subscription. So I don't remember specifically what the plans are, but I want to say they're pretty expensive. So if that is not an option for you, then the next option would be hosting video files somewhere else. That way the files do not live in your website and they are less likely to slow your page speed down. Although I have not technically experienced this myself, it is a possibility. I have uploaded second long videos like 10 seconds and under, 15 seconds and under, a minute and under into Squarespace, and I still have 20 or 25 minutes left of storage. Those videos, the short ones, haven't seemed to slow anything down, but larger ones could potentially. So that's just something to consider. Video backgrounds can look cool, often do, but they can be distracting for viewers if important information is on top of them, and they aren't accessible in Squarespace specifically because there is no way to add alt text without a third-party plugin to describe them. So screen readers don't know what's back there, or they can't tell viewers what is in the video. And also there's no way to play or pause or mute the video itself. So again, not accessible because they can't, if for some reason the motion is prohibitive for that viewer, they're not able to pause without a third party. There is a third party plugin that I recommend from Will Meyer's plugin shop. I don't remember the price. You can go check it out for yourself. I have used it. It works great. And that does help with the pause option. So for hosting, if you're not hosting your video files in Squarespace, first option that's totally free is YouTube, of course, because YouTube manages and stores the files, the video files themselves. They give you shareable players. It's really easy to set up and use. You can use it for free. Like I said, it's owned by Google, so you can log in with your Google account. It also works really well as a search engine, both in YouTube and through Google, because Google owns YouTube. So your videos are likely to show up in video searches or even text-based searches in the video section. YouTube manages the file storage for you because they want you to use their platform, so they're not going to charge you, which is great. Videos can be monetized after you get to a certain point, which is a perk. I wouldn't ever create a situation where you're relying on that, but it's a great perk. The videos themselves can be public, they can be private, they can be unlisted. The difference between that, obviously public is like anybody in YouTube can search for it and find it. Anybody basically anywhere can search for it and find it. Private videos are private to you as the account owner only. That does not mean they are secret with a secret link you can share to people. Only people in your account can see it. Unlisted videos are videos that are not public, so not searchable, but with a direct link to the video, they can watch it. So you can link to the video that's unlisted and you can embed unlisted videos as well. YouTube Studio offers account analytics on top of all of that. So this is a decent solution to start with. But for the cons, if someone hacks into your Google account, potentially that also means they could hack into your YouTube because you used the same Google account to log in both places. Just something to keep in mind, so that two-factor authentication is very important. Videos can't be monetized until you reach certain numbers, so don't expect to be able to do that until you hit two different number points that are important: 1,000 subscribers and up to 4,000 watch hours, which takes a long time to get to. And then of course, commission is based on the value of the ads that they actually play on your videos, so how much you make will depend on the kinds of ads that YouTube thinks will be most viewed on your videos. So it can vary wildly is what I'm trying to say. You can't turn off video sharing. This is what I was about to say earlier, even on unlisted videos, which means if you have an unlisted video that you're using as part of a course or something where you don't want people to be able to share that video with other people, then this is not the best option because they're going to be able to do that and there's no way for you to turn that off. And then of course people will see ads both during the video and at the end of the video. It will display other videos at the very end. And so it's sort of a cluttered kind of feel. If you're looking for something more minimal, this is not the option. The next option that works with Squarespace, I should have mentioned that before, YouTube and Vimeo are the only two options that work natively within the Squarespace platform with the video block button. But of course you can embed videos from anywhere. So you would use a different block for that. So with Vimeo, they have affordable plans. They start really, really affordable. So they feel more approachable if you are getting to the point where you need to pay for a video host. You can also log in with your Google account if you keep that other con in mind. Your videos can also be public, private, or hidden or unlisted, but you can control the limitations to that here. There are no traditional unwanted ads on your videos. You can technically put in your own like call to actions on certain plans. Those tend to be on the higher level plans, so those are going to be the more expensive options. You can also turn off sharing to keep videos exclusive. So this is what I was talking about with that is a limitation on YouTube that is not a limitation on Vimeo. You can have an unlisted video and turn off the sharing button, so they're not able to do that without some serious workarounds. You can integrate Vimeo with Zoom, actually. This is something that I've recently done to record replays in the cloud and automatically send that recording to Vimeo. So it actually shows up in both places, and you do have to delete the one that shows up in Zoom to clear out your storage over there, but it will send it automatically to Vimeo for you, so you don't have to download it from Zoom, upload it to Vimeo, and all of those other steps. So it kind of skips some of the admin work, which is really nice. You also have a bunch of access to other really cool features dependent on the plan that you have, like teleprompters and screen and or camera recording, so you can capture your screen and do all that. You can have some decent editing capability and adding chapters to your videos, all within Vimeo. The cons: this is not a platform owned by Google to my knowledge, so the videos themselves have very little SEO value. I don't know that I've ever seen one of mine show up in a search result, but my YouTube videos do this frequently. Again, if someone hacks into your Google account, if you've used that to sign up for Vimeo, they could technically also get access to your other accounts that you've signed in with. So same problem as the YouTube situation, but it does make it easier to get started. You can always disconnect that later if you want to. Vimeo stores the video files for you, which is why they are charging you for the service. So they are creating space on their servers to literally put these video files so that you don't have to have that. And that makes some of the higher tiered plans that have the cool features kind of expensive. So depending on what your budget is, this might be a hard option. And videos can't be monetized with ads in the same way that they can with YouTube, but I really don't think that's part of the problem. You're not really coming to Vimeo for that anyway. So to optimize and edit your videos, here are some options, because I know that's your next question. Like, okay, now I know where to put them. How do I actually create and edit them? If you need to compress a video, there's a free app for Mac. I think it's also available on Windows and Linux as well, called Handbrake. And you can see some options here. This is also, all of these screenshots, by the way, are in the actual freebie that you can download. So this is not going to go away. You don't have to take screenshots. I should have said that in the beginning. So that's going to help you convert the videos into other formats, compress them so that they're smaller file sizes, etc. You can also use Descript to edit your video and export them. I don't think it compresses them, but it may do some of that while it exports. So that's optional. They have a limited free plan, I think. Otherwise, plans start around $10 a month, so it's pretty affordable. It also comes with a bunch of extra features like resizing the videos, editing for certain formats, fancy animated captions, stock B-roll, images, videos, GIFs, stickers, music even. On the lower plans, you have some limitations for how much of that you have access to. So like the first 12 results or something. And then on the higher plans, you have access to all of it. But for the most part, all the features in Descript are available on all plans for the editor itself. And then actually they just bought Squadcast recently. So I don't know if that applies to all plans, but you also get access to Squadcast definitely on the highest plan. So you can interview people in high quality situations. It's like a Riverside certified competitor. And then of course, Final Cut Pro, that's my preference for a professional video editor. That's what I purchased. I have access to Adobe Premiere. I just don't like it. And I haven't tried any of the others, Resolve and all of that other. So Final Cut is my preference. It's also just happens to be a one-time fee of about $300. You can also do a 90-day trial, I think, but definitely a 30-day trial. So pay one time, never pay again kind of situation. And it feels a lot like iMovie, but on steroids. So that's one that's easy to pick up if you're already familiar with iMovie, and it won't feel like trying to learn Photoshop, because Premiere Pro is a pretty big platform application. Okay, so where to find stock videos? These are the options that I would try. Pexels has lots of free stock video options for images, videos, and graphics. Canva, of course, but you need to check the license on a lot of this. You can record your own, of course. So just like take your phone, back camera, not the front one, out somewhere and make your own B-roll. May feel a little weird, but it works. And then you don't have to worry about licensing. Motion Array is something that you can use that has free stock videos, B-roll footage, music, graphics, templates for titles and transitions and all kinds of stuff. So that is roughly $30 a month for that license, and well worth it as long as you need it. Creative Market also has videos, images, graphics, logos, fonts, tons of stuff. And most of it is pretty damn affordable. So that's always worth checking out when you can't find other options. Descript has their own images, videos, GIFs, stickers, music that come with the license that you're paying for as part of paying for the service. So that's also an option. And then Paxia is something I found recently that has specifically vertical stock video footage, which is interesting. So if your marketing methods involve being on social media, that's going to be an interesting option for you. So that's where I would start if you need stock videos. And then what I would not do is pick something and use it willy-nilly and never check the license. So definitely check the license. Make sure you're using it legally within whatever the limitations of the license are. So I hope that was helpful for you to get that kind of overview, blanket understanding of all the basics for image sizing, the resolution, video tips, where to find stuff like that, all of the things. If you want to know how to resize and rename images on your Mac without Photoshop, then watch this video next. It actually shows you step by step how to do that piece before you pull the image into Tiny JPEG. And of course, if you want to just drop your files into Tiny JPEG first to see how small they are to start with so that you can skip the other thing, that's fine. Totally fine. You can always do it again later if the resulting image isn't compressed enough and the file size isn't low enough. That's always an option. So I hope that's helpful for you today. If you had an aha moment or you were like really thankful that you landed on this video and found a solution, leave a comment below. I always want to hear how this is landing with you guys and if I should do more topics like this. So that's all I have for you in this video. Make sure you check out that video next and I will see you in the next one. Bye.